Network Automation Nerds podcast. Hi, this is part 2 of an interview with Josh. In part 1, Josh talked about his origin story as well as his path to network automation. In part 2, we geek out more about technology topics as well as looking forward. Enjoy. So we talked about, the network automation, the kind of the good parts about it. How do you go through some of the obstacles, crawl, run, fly, that sort of stuff. So there, like you said, network automation is a gigantic chunk of technology under one umbrella. So what is your tech stack like? Like Python, Docker, Ansible. So what are those things that you, I guess, kind of what you like, and where do you see they fit into the picture?
Yeah, definitely. Python's the king right now. The stack. We've done a very good job of take a look at Network to Code's open source projects, and this is kind of what we've standardized on
Okay.
internally, which is in our open source. Right. So within Python, we're using Python Invoke to just help with the various commands, which we also very heavily use Docker. And so I also still believe in Docker. I think I've got a couple Docker projects in my personal repo out there. And so Invoke helps with all the Docker commands, because without it, it's just like, what was that Docker compose command? What is this? So Invoke helps to handle all that, and we'll run those commands. And then Python Poetry from a package management, it's out there. Virtual environment management. If I'm being honest with you, and a bunch of Python folks might want to hate on me for this, but I'd much prefer to have my virtual environment as a Docker container. Just running, hey, I want to move from Python 3.8 to try 3.11.
Right.
It's just a change of Docker command, right?
Right.
And so
I've pulling different images and whatnot.
Exactly, because it'll pull. And so I've become a big fan of using Docker as my virtual environment. But again, Poetry is doing some really good things on that front. And so, yeah, Docker. And then I do set up some virtual machines here and there at my home. I've done a lot with Ansible in my past. Ansible just takes care of making it easy, such as installing Docker, getting the system set up the way I like it, and installing all the other pieces. In my book, I talk about telemetry, and so I'm trying to dog food my own dog food of, hey, monitor my Linux servers, just keep an eye on how things are moving. And so I want to automate all that set, because I can only install telegraphs so many times before it gets pretty redundant. So
right. Okay, so let me just kind of organize it for people who are just listening, right? So at the top level, you have kind of virtual machine, and the virtual machine is obviously abstract everything above the hypervisor. It's just like an OS, but it's virtual. And then you have your Docker, where you have this containerized stack of technologies that you group together, and that is kind of your virtual machine replacement. And then you move down the stack a bit about Ansible, which is like a framework based on Python, and you got your playbooks, and it takes care of a lot of the low level operations for you. And then you have your Python, which is just a programming language, and within it you mentioned a few of the libraries that you use, like Invoke, Poetry, and was there anything else that you mentioned?
I think I also we use Cookie Cutter quite a bit.
Yeah, Cookie Cutters
is there. Nornir is definitely from a network automation framework, is becoming more and more part of our core. As part one of our plugins for Nautirbot is doing config backups on devices. And it's pretty remarkable how quickly Nornir can go in and do show run or whatever the command to do backups are, and just be able to churn through that. So
I'm not very clear on that. Can you tell us a little bit about why is Nornir so much faster than, say, a Ansible playbook or a NetMiko script?
Yeah, so Nornir specifically there, it takes and handles the advanced task of multiprocessing. I think is the biggest piece. Why compared to Ansible? Ansible's got Ansible. There's a lot to it, and probably could be a whole separate show off, right? It's there and it has a whole lot of safety checks involved. Whereas
Yeah.
Nornir is kind of just a raw, here you go, network, go ahead and interact with the network device. Right. And so you can use NetMiku or Napalm at that point, or also I think Scrapply's got a plugin to Nornir. All these libraries that helped with that setup of the SSH connection. I actually did at one point. This was one of my biggest mistakes. Is I wrote.
I love it. Tell us.
Yes,
tell more.
I didn't really know about the open source community when I first got involved in Python.
Okay.
And so I'm sitting here trying to write a library to interact with network devices.
Oh wow!
There's NetMiko.
It's already there. Kirk already done the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I had done some things, and basically I learned the same mistake or not the same mistake. I had the same learnings that Kirk did about that when you SSH to a network device, at least the Cisco devices, there's actually two parts to it, right? It's SSH connection is the first part, but then you actually have to instantiate a shell.
Yeah.
Right. And so NetMiko, Scrapply, and Napalm take care of all that for you. And so that will be one of my big piece of advice if you're trying to get started and you find yourself doing things with Paramiku or trying to SSH to a device. Just go use those libraries. They're there. If there's something broken with it, file an issue and open it. Let's make the community better. So
yeah, unless you're doing something really old, right? Like, I mean, I what was that Blade? Like the old IBM like Blade switch or something like that. But also like some older 3-count switch, like you do have to go to the low level, do the expect stuff, Paramico stuff. But outside of that, there's a lot of libraries out there, different from where I would imagine different when we started, right? Like, the ecosystem is a lot more complete now. And of course, you mentioned Ansible, and just to know, like Ansible is a whole infrastructure management tool, right? It's not just about networking. It just so happens to be the most like network friendly, I would say, for amongst all the infrastructure DevOps tools. But at the same time, they're part of this big picture. Whereas the tools that you mentioned, NetMiko, Scrapply, those are actually very network focused.
Yeah, and I like to, when I talk about automation, or not automation, talk about the telemetry side of things. I use the 0 to alerts. Well, the 0 to automation might be, if you're really for the first time looking at anything, Ansible probably might be your quickest to being able to do a shell version or log into a switch and get across your entire fleet of devices.
Yeah.
But then Python is probably good, and the Nornir frameworks are going to be able to take you further. Right.
Yeah.
It's, sometimes if I liken it to keep that same analogy of 0 to 60, sometimes the Chevy's going to do just fine where you don't need the plaid mode of Tesla, to be just out on the freeway. Right.
Yeah.
But it'll get the job done for sure. And it's different. So.
Yeah, being somebody who drives a Chevy, I agree. But okay, cool. So you mentioned the book, open source network management, and then I bought the book even before we knew each other. I saw this book and heavy usage of Docker for sure, and I read the book. So tell us a little bit more about this book.
Yeah, so really it came down to when I left the large retail and went to a much smaller shop. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get involved in the open source because I didn't have the budget and I didn't have the awesome tools. And so I really wanted to be able to deploy a telemetry solution like the TIG stack. And I tried for a little bit and I couldn't get anywhere.
Okay.
So I failed at that point. I would say I went down and I didn't make any shift away from the traditional NMSs. And so at a point I got to the point I had a little bit of downtime and said, this is something I'm interested in. I'm doing some writing and I want to share how to get started, because now I do know how to get started and build a full TIG stack that gives you, whether it's a Datadog or some of the other advanced systems that have a premium price to them, and do it in the open source. And so I really want to take that time to be able to share how to do that. And so that's what really started me on this book. And from there, from a management perspective of if you're setting up a management solution, well, you also need to set up a source of truth where what are the devices you're going to monitor, and
Right.
then you also need the secrets. How do you log into this? And
Right.
so
You mean you don't like hard code in your script?
yeah, if there's a place for that, but
Yeah.
most enterprises would be frowned upon, I think. So
Yeah. You
yeah,
wouldn't
no,
pass your PCI audits.
no. And so that's really put together.
Yeah.
Docker is a great tool to be able to get rid of the it works on my machine perspective. It's something that is universal.
Yeah.
Once you do get Docker out there, Kubernetes is still able to run Docker containers and so on. And so it is getting started. Is it going to be able to monitor the 30,000 devices? It's going to take a little different setup to it, right? This is going to set up for your 100 devices type thing as getting started. But it's out there, and there's lots of communities to be able to help take you all the way to it scales, right? So
yeah, it's an introductory book, but it's a good introduction on would you say it covers like a wide range of tools, and kind of I get the feeling when I was reading it, it's kind of your own notes, right? Like, hey, this is how you would do it today, knowing try 10 other things that didn't work, and now that you're coming back to us and say, well, having bumped my head 9 other times, this is one time that I find pleasant.
Exactly. And there were definitely a few times I did bump my head in writing the book as I'm going through, and because I do take it on a journey of starting with that source of truth, getting the secrets set up. So it takes a little bit, but then once you get into, okay, now we're setting up for, the rest of the Telegraph and Prometheus and Grafana to be able to have visibility. And I absolutely, it's the book, its origins are in LeanPub. And so I haven't made a ton of updates in the past year, but I definitely, as I watch the open source, I'm going to continue to add to that. Right. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead if, alternatives to Prometheus, Grafana, and Telegraph, maybe add another chapter on that. But I, get into, as other apps become prevalent in the open source community, want to be able to write about that, and LeanPub will automatically get that all pushed out to the individuals. So
yeah, that's a good point. So here's it's just as good as any place to mention that being generous, and we'll mention again at the end of the call, end of the podcast too. Like you've agreed to give out various copies of that book, and like you mentioned for LeanPub, it's if you have the copy. Once you push out new editions, you automatically be able to download those changes and be able to get the most up to date. There's no copywriting. You don't have to read it off a website or something. You just download the file format that's most applicable to you: PDF, EPUB, or some other format like Kindle.
Yes, indeed. So, and that's why I wanted to get it out there, and why I chose LeanPub as the primary place for it. Right, from be able to continue to add to it over time, and not just be that snapshot in time. Working on publishing it other places as well, it will probably have to be a version and type thing, but that's an area I still don't know about. So I'll have to talk to you some more about it. So.
Oh my God, it was so painful. And thank you this is a good place to mention that you're the tech reviewer for the 4th edition of Mastering Python coming up. And I thank you for it. I think, I read your comments. They're very thoughtful, and give me more confidence about, just more eyeballs on it, and someone of your caliber looking at it really makes me comfortable. But you're right, like it's so painful, right? Like there's like color coding, and there's like I've read the same words like 4 times, and like that's just for this edition. And like at some point you just kind of puke when you see your own writing. And so definitely definitely something that's like very different than self-publishing, and there's pros and cons for both.
Indeed, and still got to also reverse that and say a thank you on behalf of the community. That's I think in the pre-show brought out a copy of the. I've got a copy of Eric's. I think it's a 2nd edition, but I think you're telling me it's the 1st edition, right?
Yeah, I think that was the 1st edition. I mean, I think if you have that red cover where it's like, yeah. But anyways, I'm blushing, and I thank you for the kind words. And I do like LeanPub. I did publish the Kafka book through LeanPub, and I do like the format. But you're right, it's a lot of work just to be put on yourself, right? You don't have that editor portion, but you get to publish a lot quicker, and you get to get the feedback from the users a lot quicker. So if you're up for it, I definitely put a link in the show notes and on the book. It's not very pricey, but you actually get paid more as an author because you don't have that middleman taking the royalty on the top. So you benefit, you're encouraging and sponsoring the author at the same time. I'll definitely put the link in the show notes, and like we talked about, we're going to give out a few copies. So keep your eyes open for the ways to get more book on that. We will pause the programming with a special sponsor message from me, your host, Eric. Hey guys, when it comes to network automation, have you thought about joining a group of like-minded people to ask questions and get the support you need? I would like to invite you to the Network Automation Learning Community. It is free to join and a low-pressure, safe place to post questions, get answers, and just hang out. You can sign up at members.networkautomation.community. The link is also in the show notes. Now, back to regular programming. But back into the book content itself, you mentioned some of the tools, Grafana, Prometheus, and what are some of the other challenges that you find in writing the book or learning these stacks? Because for me, it's hard to keep up with all of them. So do you find that the same thing?
It is. And I think that, I definitely call out what versions I'm running on, right?
Yeah.
Of the various pieces. Like Grafana itself has that their organization is turning out so much awesome open source projects as well.
Yeah.
Could probably just turn it into a book just about Grafana systems, right? And so it is, there's a lot to handle, and that's going to be one of the things here. If you're looking at it from your own organization, it doesn't matter. You can replace some of these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like, I almost thought about just breaking up the mastering Python networking into like different sections, and so for like these two sections would be like a book by itself, right? And then the monitoring would be by a book by itself, or security would be by itself. But like you said, it's like the publishers are involved, and once they're involved, it gets a little more complicated than that. But I definitely agree that a lot of times, not a lot of times, but in your book particular, like there's portion of it where you could go super deep into it. But I still like the book about, it's being broad, so you get like a good look and feel. It's like a buffet, right? If you really like seafood, go to a seafood restaurant, but this is the buffet for you to sample each of it a little bit.
Yeah, if you just need the hash, it's when I talk about Vault, it's HashiCorp Vault. If you just you don't want to worry about any of the other tools. You just go, straight to that. In the book there, I did set up, each chapter stood on its own, and then the last chapter munged everything together into one system. So
that's pretty awesome. So we're getting toward to the end of our talk, but I do want to look forward and look ahead into how can we help people to get started. So you mentioned, crawl, run, fly. You mentioned getting small wins. So what are some of the other recommendations that you would have for people to get started with network automation? Maybe they're interested in Ansible, Python, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So out there, from a reading perspective, definitely 2 books. Your book is definitely a must-have on there.
Okay, thank you.
And then Jason Edelman and Matt Oswalt and Scott Lowe have a book out, Network Programmability and Automation. Definitely a read to pick up. And without that in the community, I gotta say a shout. Take a look for NetMiko NetMiko, NetMiko. Kirk has throughout the year, he has both free and paid training courses. I think actually that if I go way back in my memory banks, I definitely have gone through the course and could give it. That was the Python course. And so I want to give a shout out there, and then it's just getting involved in the community.
Yeah.
Whether I know we're working on a network automation nerds community, that network to code Slack is a great place to go. So just look up network to code space Slack. It's a free sign up. There's, as you're going down the journey, there's channels there for you to get involved, to ask questions on Python, Ansible, what have you. It's there as a community. And then if you're, lots of stuff going on with Twitter, and the Twitter, look up the hashtag NetDevOps. There's definitely, that was one of my phases. As I got into the larger network automation community, there is still a good amount of interaction on Twitter there. So,
yeah, I mean, 100% on all the resources that you mentioned. I went through both of the free version of Kirk's course as well as the paid version, and they're excellent, right? Like they actually put you into context, and context that really matters, right? So when I was taking Kirk's course, I was at Microsoft, so there's no lack of like developers around me to ask around. But at the same time, they're in a different context. They're worried about something else. But when you go to Kirk's class, they actually, both the free and the paid version, he puts it into the right context for you. It's, the host names are the router host names, and the environments, the scripts are all very network specific. Like you said, Paramiko has his own glitches when it comes to like Cisco devices. So he took care of a lot of that for you.
Yeah, and it takes care. Like I said, a lot of these libraries that are out there, use them.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid or don't be ashamed by. I have to be able to write this myself. And in fact, that's probably, as the person that did write one myself in my very first formative years of network automation, it is not the right way. You do learn some pieces and you learn some of the underlying whys, but yeah.
Yeah, and also Jason's book too, right? Like I think second edition is on preview. I think it's still a kind of a draft review, but keep an eye out for it, right? Like if you need it, just get the first edition. But there is a second edition that's coming out with the new cover and all that.
Oh, I didn't know there was a new cover. I know there's a lot of work going into with various previews and so on. So
I think they actually, in the first edition, I'm just like peeking over to my bookshelf because I think the first edition has one of like the coolest animals. Because I forgot who I talked to, but he was just telling me like there's a exactly that's one of the coolest animals. He was telling me like he didn't want a fish to be his O'Reilly book cover, but he's like anything but a fish, and he got a fish. And then he actually went back to the O'Reilly publisher and said, hey, what if I just pay you? Like I will commission this artist to come up with a different animal, and I don't care what but they said no. So like I all the power to Jason and Scott and for their incredible good luck to have that to have that nice animal on the cover.
Indeed. So
yeah. So where do you see network automation in the next 1 to 3 years as a good wrap up to, like looking ahead? Like where do you see the trends are if I ask you and look into your crystal ball?
Yeah, so this one I might catch some flack for this one.
We'll put it in the spreadsheet and say, okay, was Josh right or not?
Yeah, I definitely see APIs. As network automators, we all want to work with APIs, and the network team, the whole reason why you write automation is so you have to do less, and usually you're only doing work if someone's asking you. So that's where I do believe in APIs, providing APIs to your partner teams for network automation.
Yeah.
And along those lines is chat. And chat ops, and one of my positions, I decided I got a lot of pages overnight, or not a lot, but I just didn't want to get called overnight. So I wrote a web page to help the help desk and do all the things that I would do. And so I did that. And then I showed it to a manager, and the manager said, okay, let me bookmark that page. And it ended up seeing her bookmarks. She's never going to remember that bookmark page. Right. And so that's where everybody's in chat every day, right? From Microsoft Teams or Slack or whatever it happens to be. That's kind of now the universal interface. And so I do still see chat ops as that next phase to be able to interact with network organizations.
Some small program called ChatGPT something.
Indeed. That's it's, that could also be a great resource to be looking at. I know I've gone out there and asked it to give me a few scripts, and I think when I asked a Nornir question, it was giving Nornir 2 instead of Nornir
Oh,
3.
wow.
So
Okay.
as you use Chat GPT, you do have to
Be
be careful,
careful.
right? Of
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
might the versions behind things, but it gave a nearly complete solution there.
That's what's my not to diverge our question a little bit too far, but that was my experience too. It's like the general framework is right, and then if you ask for like a literature question, like fundamental questions, those are right, but
Yeah.
the dates and names and like the specifics is sometimes a little bit iffy, and it probably gets better as the as more people use it, and as more people such as yourself starting to correct them, so that training model becomes a little bit more robust. So what else?
Indeed.
Like you talked about APIs, chat ops. Is there anything else that you want to mention?
I think the only other thing that I'm going to start to see, we're seeing a little bit more is orchestration of network automation.
Okay.
I think you're starting to see a little bit more putting your automation on Kubernetes type,
Yeah.
where you have Kubernetes or whatever your flavor of container automation is.
Orchestration. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do still see containers as very viable,
Yeah.
and down that path. Um, and, and I'm seeing a lot of Python libraries just maturing in general,
Yeah.
that they are in a good state. They're accomplishing things for organizations and getting the task done. Right. One of the big things for me is I like getting things done, whether and moving the needle. And so
Yeah.
by uh, that's a big part of what I do, network automation, day in and day out, and
Yeah.
at Network Code, just helping to see the journey for organizations move along. So
Yeah, it's very nice. I mean, I think one of the signs for the libraries being mature is keeping up with like the latest change of Python, right? So like you see this with like Scrapply, Carl's doing a great job on just keeping it up to date, Kirk as well. So I think that's one of the signs of being mature is that you're growing with the Python as opposed to like it's somebody else's like side project and one day they just
yeah,
decide not to work on it in the garage anymore.
yeah, and I am seeing a little bit of that where there isn't support for 310 or 311 yet,
Hmm.
right? We're out to 311, and hey, the other libraries want to move forward. I mean, Ubuntu 22 comes with 310, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
on
yeah, it
it.
did.
And so, hey, want to use some of these libraries that are out there, and they don't have 310 support. It's challenging, right?
Yeah.
So
They're like, hey, go get a Docker image that runs 3.7.
yes,
Something
so
like that. That's your new virtual environment, like you said.
indeed,
Yeah,
so.
cool. Hey, Josh, it's just been such a pleasure to chat. Like I said, it's so great to just geek out on these kind of stuff, talking to a fellow author. So tell people where they could find you on social, or if they want to follow your work. What's the best way to kind of get in touch and follow your work?
Yeah, probably the best place to get in touch with me is via Twitter.
Okay.
I'm there at VanDeraa J, so VanDeraa.
Yeah, we'll
Last
put a
name, lived
link in
with
the
it.
show notes.
Yeah, lived with it my whole life. But take a look out there. You can josh-v.com as
Okay.
well is my website that has links to all things. And if you've and also trying out Mastodon on the free and open source side of things. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm in the socials, and then Network to Code Slack.
Yeah.
It's out there. I'm there as I think it's Jay VanDeraa. Between that, if you look up VanDeraa and Jay, somehow I'm very
Not that many
fortunate
people
for
with VanDeraa as
yeah,
not that many VanDeraahs out there who's
no,
also a
there
network engineer, I guess.
indeed. So, and I'm out on the socials. So, but yeah, I want to thank you as well for having me on and being able to be a part. I know we've talked on your books, and being able to giving me the opportunity to be the tech reviewer on your fourth edition. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So
No, the pleasure is all mine. Like I said, I am very glad you get to like look at the work and makes me comfortable and sleep better at night for sure. So and also like we said in the middle of the podcast that we're able to you're generous enough to actually give out some of the free copies of the book. Just keep an eye out on when the podcast is released. That we'll announce it. Chances are I think we'll just do some kind of drawing or maybe the first few people to message me or whatnot, and we'll see. But you being a generous person, I can't imagine we're too strict on like the number of copies, or like too strict on like follow me on Twitter.
Nah, exactly. It's about making sure the community, if the community gets larger and is able to adopt, the network automation community wins altogether. So that's, as long as things keep winning from network automation, I'm happy as can be about that. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, let's grow that. Let's grow that community. Let's grow that pie, right? Like it's not, so well, thank you again, Josh, for being here. And I wish you all the best of luck on that book. And I hope to see that book being 100% soon, completed
Yes.
soon.
Yes, thank you. And same. So
cool. Thanks for listening to the Network Automation Nerds podcast today. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcast platforms. Until next time, bye-bye.